All right, so let's start by being brutally honest here, because I'm a sucker for that kind of thing. So, your grandfather, his dollar, it went way further, way further. And the women that he courted were way purer. That's just a fact. I mean, his paycheck, it covered a house, it covered a car, and it covered a family. And his wife didn't have, there was no internet. She didn't have a smartphone. She didn't have social media. She didn't have an OF, right? So his community, his milieu, it didn't celebrate broken homes. It didn't call that progress or empowerment. That wasn't a thing. And what also wasn't a thing is he wasn't drowning in subscriptions and taxes and fees after fees after fees and endless inflation. He lived in a world, imagine this, he lived in a world where a man's effort actually bought him dignity. And where women actually understood that purity was valuable. They understood purity as value, not oppression. Go figure. Now juxtapose that to what you have today. You've got a shrinking dollar. It's lost 97% of its purchasing power, which I'll get to here in a second. You've got inflated costs. And speaking of inflation, you've got a dating market that's just completely and utterly corrupted by social media, by adult entertainment, and just endless attention seeking. Men have never worked harder for less. And women have never been more celebrated for giving less. That's where we are. So back to the dollar, shall we? Let's go back to that. So in 1960, the minimum wage was $1 an hour. And gold, that's when gold was at $35 an ounce. Now, if you index that to gold today at $3,900 an ounce, that's what it's currently at, roughly, that comes out to about $111 an hour, which is over $230,000 a year. Back in 1960, even entry-level workers had six-figure purchasing power in today's money. $230,000 a year, over that. That's why one income could buy a house and a car and raise a family. The dollar, it did not just weaken, it was gutted by the Federal Reserve since 1913. Your grandfather could support a family on one income. He bought a house for what you pay for a used car. He didn't drown in credit card debt, in interest, in student loan debt, in medical bills. He wasn't drowning in those things. Inflation, it wasn't eating his savings. And yet today men are told by those previous generations who had it so good to just work harder, while the dollar they earn buys way less every single year. You are working 60, 70, 80 hours to match his 40. And yet you can't even afford a starter home. And that's not because you're a lazy bum, dude. It's because the system was rigged to bleed your generation dry by design. And here's the insult. While his dollar went further, his money also carried respect. That's because it was still tied to gold. Up until 1971, when Nixon took us off the gold standard. It was tied to gold. So when he laid it on the table, it meant stability. But now, fast forward post 1971, when they created the petrodollar, when you lay your Federal Reserve note down, It means survival. What you have is an IOU, a glorified IOU. But yeah, back to women. So your grandfather, he married a woman who hadn't been with 50 men before him. A woman whose value was tied to her loyalty, her character, and her purity. Now, today, purity is mocked. It's utterly mocked, and loyalty is nothing short of optional. And hypersexuality is branded as liberation. Like I said earlier, women didn't have an Instagram explore page full of thirsty validation or a Tinder carousel of men offering attention or an audience of dudes just paying to see them undress. His women didn't have an audience like that. His choice was clear. It was more rooted in reality. Yours is corrupted. It's corrupted by algorithms that just amplify dysfunction. And the tragedy is this. You're told to compete in a marketplace that's been poisoned, where men are disposable, women are untouchable, and commitment has been replaced by utter chaos. Your grandfather, he was respected. His role was clear. He was a provider. He was a protector. He was a father. Even if he was rough around the edges, he was the foundation. Now, today, men are treated like optional accessories. They're replaceable, they're disposable, and they're demonized. The court system, it doesn't see you as a father, it sees you as a paycheck. And the culture doesn't see you as a leader. It just sees you as toxic. But go look at your grandfather's photos. He stood tall. He wore dignity like armor. And sure, he wasn't perfect, but he was needed. That's the difference. He lived in a world where a man was needed. You're living in one where a man is tolerated if he pays. When the dollar loses its value, society loses its stability. When women lose their purity, families lose a vital pillar in their foundation. You don't just have inflation of money, you have inflation of immorality. Everything is inflated. Everything. Nothing is grounded. Not in reality. Your grandfather didn't face mass layoffs every other year. He didn't live under the microscope of corporate surveillance. He wasn't medicated into compliance or told that his masculinity was dangerous. He built, you consume. He secured, you survive. And it's not, this isn't because you're a failure. It's because the world you inherited was already collapsing by design. We are watching the controlled demolition of the American empire. And I get it, men are exhausted, and not just financially, not just sexually, but existentially. You wake up every single day to work harder for less, to be judged harsher for more, and to be loved weaker for deeper sacrifices. The reason you feel insane is because the deal changed. Your grandfather gave effort and received stability, through his efforts. You give effort and you just receive criticism. And he gave loyalty and received purity, where you give loyalty and you just receive betrayal. The misery isn't a flaw in you, it's the math of a broken equation. When effort no longer equals reward, men burn out. And when sacrifice no longer equals respect, men burn out. They collapse under that weight. And that's where so many of you are right now. So what do? You stop lying to yourself. Stop pretending the dollar is stable. Stop pretending the dating pool is pure. Stop pretending the system wants you strong. It doesn't. It wants you docile, broke, distracted, and quiet. But here's the truth. Men don't quit. Your grandfather built because he had no other option. You build because if you don't, nobody else will. And I get it. You may not get his dollar, and you sure as hell ain't going to get his woman. But you can still get his grit and his dignity. His will to stand tall when the world is crumbling. And if enough men do that, then the system can't win. And I get it. The dollar, it keeps inflating. Purity keeps fading. But the man who refuses to bow, that man is timeless.